Two small children stood at the top of the plane steps in the cold London air, holding their father's hands, while three black Range Rovers waited below. That was the image people could not stop talking about. Not the leaked report, not the palace whispers, not even the fear of a title being taken away. It was that one moment. Prince Harry stepping off a private jet at RAF Northolt, looking tired and serious, then turning back toward the cabin door. And then Archie and Lilibet appeared. For years, the world had watched this family through headlines, statements, rumors, and carefully chosen photos. But on this particular occasion, the story stopped feeling like royal paperwork and started feeling painfully human. A father, two children, a family walking into a storm bigger than all of them. Today we are diving into what really happened behind the palace walls, or at least what journalists, royal watchers, and insiders say was unfolding. Because this was never just about a title. It was never just about Meghan Markle. And it was never only about William and Harry fighting again. This was about control, legacy, and a family that may have reached the point where private pain could no longer stay private. Accounts from people close to the royal orbit say tensions had been building for a long time. Not for days, not for weeks, for years. The split between Prince William and Prince Harry had already become one of the most talked about family rifts in the world. But then a new twist reportedly entered the picture, one so personal, so explosive, that it threatened to push everything into a new and darker phase. There were whispers of a private Dina report. There were whispers of a palace review. There were whispers that Meghan had become the center of a battle she never expected to fight in this way. And once those whispers started, everything else began to move faster. People close to the story say Meghan had grown deeply uneasy about one thing in particular: her title. The title of Duchess of Sussex was not just a label, it was part of her public identity now, the name attached to headlines, charity work, interviews, and controversy. Insiders claim she feared that once Prince William became king, he might move to strip that title away. That fear did not appear out of nowhere. What many people don't know is that the royal family had already shown a willingness to take hard action when it felt the institution was under pressure. When King Charles moved against Prince Andrew's remaining honors and royal standing, it sent a message through the whole system. Palace observers saw it as a sign that the monarchy was entering a colder, stricter phase, and Meghan, according to those whispers, noticed very quickly. One insider described her mood as alert, not panicked. Another said she was done waiting for other people to decide her future. That matters, because it changes the shape of the story. This was no longer about quietly hoping things would calm down. This was about preparing for a fight before the blow even landed. So while the public saw polished appearances and the usual royal headlines, accounts from journalists and insiders reveal that legal conversations may already have been happening in private. Top lawyers, constitutional questions, old precedents, new strategies. Meghan was reportedly preparing for battle before the battle was even announced. And then came the thing that made people lean in even harder. Some reports suggested this whole conflict was not only about titles and public image. Hidden beneath the royal drama was something even more disturbing: a secret paper trail, questions around money, strange financial records, and a growing sense inside palace circles that something larger had to be confronted. That is when the mood changed. Because family drama is one thing. A possible institutional scandal is another. People started asking new questions. Why was Prince William said to be so firm, so cold, so resolved? Why did some insiders describe him as strangely calm in the middle of a personal family break? Why did the palace seem less emotional than strategic? And why did the timing of certain moves feel so deliberate? One palace source claimed a statement was prepared with military precision, released before dawn, timed in a way that gave the palace a head start before America woke up and Meghan's team could react. If true, it was not just communication, it was a power move. That is what makes this story so gripping. On the surface, it looks like a family quarrel between two brothers who once seemed inseparable. But underneath, there are claims of legal planning, control of narrative, questions over lineage, and private decisions that may affect children, titles, money, and the future of the monarchy itself. And in the middle of it all sits one impossible question. How did it get this bad? Royal insiders remember a time when William and Harry were seen as a unit, two boys shaped by the same grief, two brothers walking behind their mother's coffin, then growing into men the public often imagined would always protect each other. That image lasted for years, longer than perhaps it should have. But images can lie, or at least hide the truth, because behind the smiles, behind the public events, behind the carefully managed photographs, something harder had been taking shape. Resentment, mistrust, silence, and eventually, two very different ideas of what duty meant. Some say Harry chose freedom. Some say William chose the crown. Some say both choices came with a cost nobody can fix now, and the children arriving in London only made that cost impossible to ignore. That scene at the airfield did not answer anything. It made everything heavier. It reminded people that beneath the language of commissions, titles, reports, and royal protocols were real blood ties that no palace wall could erase. A grandfather who was also a king. A father who had come home carrying visible strain. Two children stepping into a country that knew their names before it truly knew them. But there's more to this story, because long before that plane landed, long before lawyers and reports and possible title battles filled the air, the cracks had already widened. And once you go back and trace the path carefully, one thing becomes clear. This crisis did not begin with one document. It began with years of hurt. It began with patterns, and it began with people inside the palace quietly realizing that the next chapter would not be handled with soft words. Let's talk about how this all started to feel inevitable. People who followed the royal family closely often point to the early contrast between William and Harry. William was usually seen as the steady one, careful, controlled, raised with the weight of the crown always hovering over him. Harry, by comparison, often seemed more restless, more emotional, more willing to push against the boundaries that royal life placed around him. That difference mattered more with time. At first, it almost looked useful. One brother serious, one brother warm. One carrying the future of the institution, the other giving it a human spark. For a while, the balance worked. Royal insiders, journalists, and former staff have long described moments when the brothers leaned on each other in ways outsiders could only partly understand. They shared grief no one else could fully share. They shared a mother whose memory never really left the room. And for years, many people believed that bond would survive anything. Then Meghan entered the picture, and everything changed speed. To be clear, Meghan did not invent the pressure already inside that family. The monarchy had always been built on pressure, tradition, image, silence, rules that were never really rules until somebody broke them. But Meghan brought something unfamiliar into that system. She was American. She was from Hollywood. She was outspoken in a world that preferred coded language. And whether people admired that or disliked it, No one could deny she shifted the balance. Suddenly, the old structure had a new center of gravity. Some saw promise in that, others saw risk. Royal reporters still talk about the early excitement around Meghan. The glamour, the fresh energy, the hope that she and Harry might modernize the image of the monarchy. But accounts from journalists and insiders reveal that optimism did not last very long. Beneath the public smiles, there were already signs of friction. Small things at first. Protocol issues, clashes of style, questions about who was advising whom, concerns over media leaks. Then came the bigger shift, the sense that family disagreements were no longer staying inside the family. That is where trust began to erode. Because once people inside a system believe private moments may become public stories, every conversation changes. That is exactly what many say happened between William and Harry. A recent reported call between the brothers was described as brief, tense, and almost empty. Less than 15 minutes. Careful words, controlled voices, no warmth, no real substance. That tells you something important. Their relationship was not broken because they stopped caring. It was broken in the much sadder way, when people still care, but no longer feel safe with each other. That kind of break cuts deeper, and there were warning signs before the bigger crisis ever came into view. Society insiders report that William had grown increasingly focused on protecting what he saw as the institution itself, not the family image. The institution. Those are not the same thing. Family can forgive weakness. Institutions often cannot. That difference may sound small, but it changes everything. Once a person starts defending the system over the relationship, the emotional temperature drops fast. One reported line attributed to William says a lot: "We can't let sentiment destroy the throne." If he really said it, that was the moment his thinking became clear. Not hate, not revenge, duty. Cold, heavy, unbending duty. And then there was Meghan's side of the story. According to reported accounts, she was not waiting around to see what others decided for her. She was said to be speaking with legal experts, looking at precedent, and trying to understand whether a duchess title could actually be challenged or removed under future royal authority. That tells us she sensed danger long before the public could see it. People often assume royal conflict is emotional chaos, but what many people don't know is that some of the most serious royal battles begin in silence. Drafted papers, private consultations, quiet meetings, strategic timing. This one appears to have followed that pattern. While headlines focused on personalities, something more formal may already have been growing underneath. Then another pattern began to emerge. King Charles reportedly took a harder line in areas where once there might have been ambiguity. Prince Andrew's stripping of remaining titles and honors became a major signal. It showed the monarchy was willing to take visible, decisive steps in order to protect itself. And if that precedent existed for one troubled royal figure, why wouldn't others wonder who might be next? Meghan reportedly did wonder. A lot. And her fear was not only symbolic. A title is status, yes, but it is also power, identity, and public positioning. Losing it would not just bruise pride, it would reshape how she is seen forever. That is why insiders say she took the threat seriously. Then came another layer. The feeling that this was no longer only about image or family hurt. More and more whispers pointed to documents, internal reviews, and questions around confidential behavior. A classified dossier, possible protocol breaches, media leaks, narrative manipulation. Nothing fully public, nothing fully proven in daylight, but enough to make palace insiders feel the ground shifting beneath them. That is always the dangerous phase. when everyone knows something is happening, but no one knows how much. One former observer of royal affairs described these moments as the palace equivalent of bad weather before a storm. The air changes first. Staff go quiet. Calls become shorter. Meetings multiply. People start speaking in half sentences because they don't know who might repeat the rest. And then someone decides the waiting is over. That appears to be where William and Harry's already damaged bond met the machinery of the crown. One brother still tied to duty, one brother already half outside the system, one woman at the center of the firestorm, and children whose names were now being pulled into discussions they never chose. It is one thing for adults to go to war with each other. It is another when legacy, inheritance, and recognition start touching the next generation. That was the warning sign nobody could ignore. Because once Archie and Lilibet became part of the deeper conversation, through titles, through records, through questions about recognition and standing, the whole thing stopped feeling like ordinary royal drama. It became something larger, heavier, and crueler. Then came the moment that changed the temperature completely. There were whispers of money, and once money enters a family crisis like this, every old wound opens again. On this particular occasion, the palace corridors were said to be unusually quiet. That detail matters, not because silence is rare in royal spaces, but because this was a different kind of silence. According to one reported aide account, it felt like static in the air. Phones had slowed. The press office, usually alive before sunrise, was still. The kind of stillness that tells everyone something has already been decided. Then, according to palace whispers, Prince William gave the order. Release it. Just 2 words. And yet people close to the story say those 2 words changed everything. Within minutes, a statement was live. Within an hour, the internet was in flames. Within a day, the monarchy was being described as split into 2 angry camps. One side saw a prince protecting the institution. The other saw a brother turning family pain into strategy. Either way, the tone had shifted for good. Accounts from journalists and insiders revealed that William's timing was viewed as deliberate. The release reportedly came just before dawn in London, a time that gave British media the first clean shot at shaping the narrative while much of America was still asleep. If true, it was not an emotional outburst. It was a calculated move. And that is what made it sting more. One palace insider described William the night before as eerily calm, not shouting, not pacing, not wavering. Calm in the way people become calm after they have already buried something in their minds. If that account is fair, then perhaps William had already mourned the relationship long before the public saw the fallout. That possibility is brutal, because it means the break did not happen in the statement. The statement was just the moment everyone else caught up. Then came the claims that pushed the story into stranger, darker territory. Reports began circling about a private dossier compiled by royal security. Alleged protocol breaches, alleged leaks, alleged efforts to shape palace narratives from outside normal channels. These claims sat in the air like smoke, hard to hold, hard to ignore. And then there was something even more explosive. Whispers of a private NA report, whispers of financial transactions, whispers of a hidden structure of money stretching through offshore entities. Now, any one of those things on its own might sound like tabloid excess, but the power of this story came from layering. One detail led to another. A small transaction here, a legal consultation there, a private medical facility, an INDA, a payment of $499 linked to an entity named Arkiel LLC. On paper, each detail might be explained away. Together, They formed the outline of something investigators reportedly wanted to examine more closely. That is when the palace stopped treating the situation like gossip and started treating it like risk. According to the script's own internal claims, investigators reviewing financial data found unusual movement tied to a wider commission review. What made the matter feel so charged was not simply the size of one payment. It was the pattern around it. Travel timelines, security footage, earlier transactions. Connections that, taken together, were said to create concern. The exact truth of those concerns remained locked away, but concern itself was enough to change behavior. And then Diana's trust entered the story. That was the emotional detonator. Because money is never just money in this family when Diana's name is attached. Reports suggested Prince William stepped into private talks regarding potential allocations connected to Harry's children and asked for a pause until a review was complete. Not a permanent block, just a hold. But even a hold carried enormous emotional weight. To Harry, according to those close to him, that pause felt devastating. The trust was his mother's legacy. It was the bridge between Diana and grandchildren she never got to meet. And now, even that bridge seemed pulled into a cold institutional process. One source described Harry's reaction as grief more than anger. That feels believable, because some wounds are too old and too deep for anger alone. If William truly took action touching Diana's legacy, then this was no longer a normal palace dispute. It was personal in a way that no official memo could soften. But the confrontation was still building. Reported early drafts of William's speech suggested a line that chilled many who heard it. "I would rather carry the burden of public backlash than risk the erosion of royal truth." Think about those words. Not royal peace, not royal unity, royal truth. That phrase tells you how the crisis was being framed internally, not as family drama, not as a misunderstanding, but as a question of truth, lineage, continuity, and institutional survival. Once the palace starts using that kind of language, compromise becomes much harder. Still, there was one thing nobody could fully control: Harry's return. The leaked travel manifest appeared in the early hours of a cold London morning. A Gulfstream G650, tail number ending in 722 WID, was listed for arrival at RAF Northolt instead of Heathrow. That detail made observers sit up immediately. Northolt is not casual. It is secure, official, controlled. The manifest listed one adult male under the name Henry Mountbatten Windsor and 2 young dependents, no Meghan. That omission exploded into its own wave of speculation. By the time the jet landed, cameras had already begun gathering. 3 black Range Rovers waited near the runway. Reportedly, 2 senior royal officials were present, Sir Clive Alderton and Dr. Michael Dixon. Their presence signaled that this was no ordinary family reunion. It had been coordinated at the highest level. Harry stepped out first. He looked worn down. He did not wave. He turned back. And then the children appeared. That moment changed the emotional shape of everything. All the legal angles, all the whispers, all the reported dossiers and draft speeches suddenly had to compete with the image of 2 small children stepping carefully down plane stairs to enter a family crisis they did not create. That is what made the confrontation unbearable. Because no matter what anyone believed about Meghan, William, titles, money, or palace control, Archie and Lilibet made the whole thing feel less abstract. They brought the story out of paperwork and back into flesh and blood. And yet the full truth was still not in the open. Not even close. Because behind the spectacle of arrival and reaction, the final decision was still being shaped in private by people who understood exactly how much could be broken with one conclusion. The full picture as described through insiders, journalists, and the dramatic claims inside this story, was never simple. It was a web. At the center of that web sat three connected battles. One was personal, the collapse of trust between William and Harry. One was public, the fight over titles, status, and who gets to define the royal narrative. And one was institutional, a deeper question about what kind of monarchy survives in a modern world. That is why this story felt bigger than gossip. Yes, it had all the elements people cannot resist. Leaks, reports, offshore money claims, a possible Dina twist, a threatened title, a secretive airfield arrival. But beneath all of that was something more serious, a test of whether the monarchy protects itself by adapting or by tightening its grip. Accounts from witnesses and palace observers reveal a family caught between old rules and new realities. Meghan, in this version of events, was no passive figure waiting for the palace to decide her fate. She was described as preparing legal defenses, studying precedent, and refusing to let her public identity be erased quietly. That matters because it turns her from target into actor. She was not waiting to be judged. She was preparing to resist. William, by contrast, was described as calm, firm, and almost frighteningly clear. No emotional collapse, no dramatic public scene, just a growing resolve that the institution had to come first, even if the personal cost was devastating. Those who support him would call that leadership. Those who fear it would call it ice-cold calculation. And Harry? Harry seems to sit in the saddest place of all, between worlds, between brother and wife, between memory and duty, between the life he was born into and the life he chose. That is why the reported pause around Diana's trust hit so hard. It touched the one part of this whole story that never stops hurting. The fact that both brothers still live in the shadow of a loss they never really escaped. When Diana's legacy is pulled into a modern royal conflict, the emotional voltage rises instantly. Public reaction to stories like this is always fierce because the royal family operates like a mirror. People do not just watch them, they project onto them. Some saw Meghan as a woman under attack by a rigid system. Some saw her as a disruptive force who pushed private tensions into the spotlight. Some saw William as the dutiful heir cleaning up chaos. Others saw him as a man sacrificing his brother in the name of control. That split reaction is part of why the scandal grew so large. It touched every pressure point at once. Race, class, tradition, modern marriage, media warfare, inheritance, children, power. And when those forces collide inside the most famous royal family in the world, the result is never a simple headline. It becomes culture. It becomes argument. It becomes obsession. The possible outcomes described in this story were equally heavy. If a commission or internal review moved toward full recognition and softer treatment, many would read that as the monarchy adapting to modern reality. It would suggest the palace still understood the difference between defending tradition and weaponizing it. It might even reopen a path, however narrow, towards some repair. But if things moved in the other direction, the consequences would run deeper than one woman losing a title. Recognition could be frozen. The separation between Harry's household and the institution could become formal and lasting. Archie and Lilibet would grow up with an even sharper distance between their father's birthright and their own lived reality. That kind of split echoes for generations, and it would leave William and Harry farther apart than ever. What many people don't know is that royal crises rarely end cleanly. There is no final courtroom scene where everyone hears the verdict and understands what it means. Instead, they leave residue. A silence at family gatherings, a missing seat at public events, a careful sentence in a future speech, a look that lasts half a second too long. That is how damage survives in institutions like this. Quietly, neatly, forever. The image of Harry arriving with the children may end up being the most powerful part of the whole story, not because it solved anything, but because it exposed the limit of royal machinery. No commission, no Dina paper, no leaked email, and no palace statement can fully manage what people feel when they see a father bringing his children into the middle of a fractured inheritance. That image asked a question none of the adults could control. What happens when the next generation has to carry the weight of battles they did not start? In the end, these stories provide insight into something larger than one scandal. They show how power behaves when it feels threatened. They show how institutions talk about duty while families bleed underneath. And they show how even people with titles, staff, palaces, and centuries of history are still vulnerable to the oldest human disasters of all: grief, pride, mistrust, and the need to be understood by the people who know you best. Maybe that is the real truth here. Not whether one report existed, not whether one title survives, not whether one side wins the argument, but whether a family built to symbolize continuity can survive its own emotional fractures. Because if it cannot, then all the polished language in the world will never be enough. And if it can, the repair will not begin with a statement. It will begin with something much harder. A private conversation, a softened heart, a brother willing to hear pain without turning it into policy, another willing to tell the truth without making it a weapon. Until then, the world will keep watching, not only because the family is royal, but because behind the crowns and headlines, people recognize something painfully familiar. A broken family trying to decide whether love still matters after trust is gone.